Two, one. What is up, everybody?
What's going on, y'all?
Good morning, good morning. Welcome to the podcast that still doesn't seem to have a name yet.
You've been calling it Big D and the Lantern. That,
Big D
al-
and the Lantern.
that
I think
almost
it's not a
sounds like
bad name.
a radio show name.
Yeah, it does.
But
That's
it
kind of what
also
I was.
sounds like one that was created by the cast of Always Sunny.
Yeah, yeah.
They tried to make a radio show, and then it just sounds real weird, and they're accidentally coming off in a really upsetting way. And they're like, "No, we're just trying to say this," like they always do. Because I feel like one way you can really relate to that show is like when you're trying to explain yourself and you come off in a totally different way, and you're like, "No, wait, no, it's not what I meant at all." There's a lot of that in that show.
Yeah.
Where like the outside audience takes something a totally different way, but the gang seems to see it in a better light, and like we're doing this for the right reasons kind of light.
Yeah, man. No, I think it's a good. I mean, for right now, I guess. Yeah, that could be the acting name until we decide that we want to actually have a different name. For now, I think it's good enough.
No,
Um,
I'm not saying I didn't like it. It's has a certain ring to it.
how fucking dare you say that you don't like that name? um, so yeah, we started off this morning once again playing a little music at the intro. That was Crystal Castles with the song "Plague" from their third album. Don't sue us. Thank you. I would love if you didn't sue us. I don't think we're big enough for that to happen yet. So cool.
Well, at least you're giving thanks to the people that make this music, because that's what it's about. You gotta let people know where this music's coming from, and you like
Well,
to play it. That's what counts.
yeah, man. At this point with the amount of yeah, there's so much music. You can go find that song on Spotify right now, and Spotify is free. So like I wonder where is the difference between us all in unison going and listening to a song on Spotify? Like, could we start a new version of radio where everyone has to like, there's like a time like, okay, click play now, and you'll hear the song. What's the difference between that and me just streaming the shit to you? Like, why does that become a bigger copyright issue than if everyone can just go listen to the song for free
Well,
online?
I just have to point out, in a totally realistic point, it's a monetary difference. Are we making money off of this right now? No, we're just talking. And some people have been
Right.
jumping on and watching, and that's cool. But if we ever get money off of this, it's not like you're saying, "Oh, I made that song," and you're making money. It's like if
Yeah.
if you made money and you happen to play that song, and then we're contacted by the people, it's like, okay, like what?
Well,
Or
that's
the profit we somehow got from that. Like, do you want?
yeah.
But I don't think it would ever break down to that. And
Because with our viewership right now, we've probably made like $1. So it's.
bull. Let's keep it
Yeah.
up, y'all. No.
But that's like and it's interesting because I mean if we do get a little bit bigger because me and my brother were talking about having him hop on and doing some music reviews and I would give shout outs and if we ever get to the point where we're making money off of it I would of course want to get permission from the bands to be able to use their music
Absolutely.
and whatnot. But at the same time, like there's some vibe of like pirate radio going on in my head. It's like I'm giving them a shout out. I'm telling people who that band was and what the name of the song was if they want to hear it. And there's so much shit for free on the internet. Fuck off if you think there's something wrong. I don't. I just don't. I fail to see where there's something wrong with that. You
Anyways,
know.
yeah, I think we might be looking too far into it. Anyways,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I think a better idea might be to bring local unknown artists in, or even just their music. They don't need to show up and try to hook up all their equipment and jam out. It's like, here's a snippet from this
Hmm.
song by these people that hasn't come out yet, or they're yet to be well known. Like the music that we were playing in the last few episodes was unfinished songs that my friend the Snow Leopard and I have been making together, just as
Yeah.
it's like an unofficial little music project where I have a handful of songs. I like to rap, and then he's getting better at producing this music using Logic and different programs on his computer. He has a little studio set up. Um,
Yeah.
so if we had more of those kinds of people bringing their music in, I think there'd be way less of that issue ever occurring. And then when it comes to pass that maybe we get more viewers and then get more influence in terms of like
Well,
who.
that's why, yeah, there's, and also that's a big reason while going forward, and even in the future, let's say we did somehow, this blew up in any way, shape, or form, I'm still going to do more underground bands. Like, people have heard of Crystal Castles, but not everyone's heard of Crystal Castles. So, like, I'd like to keep using bands like that. Like, I'm not sitting here putting up the fucking Pink Floyd songs, I'm not putting up, Nicki Minaj and shit.
I mean, if you prepped everyone for that, Pink Floyd, you can listen to an album all the way through,
Mm-hmm.
and it's amazing. It's just overplayed. A lot of it is overplayed.
Well,
Uh,
and it's those are the kind of things that I feel like we'd start getting hammered with copyright over, because it's
that's
like
absolutely, yeah.
they're not even in control of that shit at this point. Like or something like even like the new Mastodon album. Like I would love to play some of the new Mastodon album, but they're owned by Warner Brothers, and that's I'm not even gonna try and fuck with Warner Brothers. So I'll go with smaller bands because I think there's a reciprocal. We're playing some shit from a band that someone may not have heard of that watches this, and and we're just doing small snippets. I think everyone could agree that's pretty fair.
And the same light, and let's jump away from this topic as soon as I finish saying this. Warner Bros. And DC are actually kind of tied together right now, especially with like Mortal Kombat. And just
For using your music and your character likeness.
yeah, for the record, DC, I'm not trying to profit off of. I'm trying to express myself as best as I can, and this is how I like doing it. And I'd like to be an honorary Green Lantern officially through DC. So if we ever got a response from them, even a no would be an ultimate like you've been seen. This is your warning. Like
Yeah,
that
we'll
would
we'll
be awesome. And then from there we can worry about what the fuck to do after.
yeah. Going on in the future, we'll play free advertisements for you. How about that? We'll advertise your new 52, and we'll,
Yeah,
we'll give you shout outs for free.
someone gave me this nickname before any word about the Justice League movie was coming out,
Hmm.
and it's like there's a whole other backstory to it. But anyways, going back to what we were initially going to start talking about is this commercial you were telling me about last night that I hadn't watched yet, and
Oh yeah.
I watched it right before I went to bed, and man, I would have to say it almost gave me nightmares. But
um, what do you think? Do you think we should try? I could try and play a little snippet of it on the show if I can find it. Um,
I mean, I think at this point it's pretty well known to the point where like if you
People have probably seen it.
okay, if you don't know what we're talking about, Kendall Jenner is in a Pepsi commercial where she's doing what is it, a photo shoot, or she's doing a film, something. She has a
Hmm.
blonde wig on, and there are protesters peacefully marching by, and then it shows another clip of a guy furiously playing what is it, cello, and like
Yeah.
showing all these different walks of life, which is cool. Way to go,
Hmm.
Pepsi. And then all of a sudden, here comes Kendall Jenner. She's like, "No, something's not right. I need to go drink Pepsi."
Hmm.
And then she grabs a Pepsi. Well, she rips her wig off very dramatically, and she grabs a Pepsi. And like you were saying, this is it's funny. I didn't even look for it, and then it was like the next thing that came up on YouTube after I got off the phone with you. Of course, YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we noticed you were talking about that Kendall Jenner commercial. You know what's
That
funny about
Pepsi.
that commercial is last time I checked, it had 55,000 dislikes. And I believe 2 to 5,000 likes. I'm pretty sure it was either two. It's somewhere in that range. That's a pretty wide range. But at the same time, you compare even 5,000 likes to 55,000 dislikes. Because I think
Yeah.
that the main point of it is in the commercial. The part that I didn't explain is she grabs Kendall Jenner, rips her wig off, grabs his Pepsi, And like you were saying last night, she walks up to a police officer, and they're all standing in a line, like very seriously, and she gives it to the youngest one, and he grabs it, like, "Am I supposed to be doing this?" And he like picks it open and drinks it, and he looks at the other cops, and he's like, "Everything's all right now." And
Yeah.
it's such horseshit, dude.
Everyone's like, "Woo! He's drinking that Pepsi."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I mean, if you could solve the world's problems with Pepsi, Pepsi would they would be fine. They wouldn't
Dude,
make commercials.
and the reality of the situation is, let's say, first of all, I mean, everything about this commercial is, bullshit. But if fucking Kendall Jenner, by the way, I said Kylie Jenner about 1,000,000 times yesterday. That's wrong. But I don't know. They're essentially the same creature, so I don't really I don't give a shit. But she walks up. If she were to walk up in real life at a protest and go to hand a Pepsi to somebody, to a cop, he would probably tase her or mace her in the face and be like, "She was trying to assault me. She had a Pepsi bomb in her hand. That was a gun. She had a gun
Like
disguised as a can of Pepsi."
pretty much in real life, no matter who you were, if you like walked up to a cop during a protest and got too close to them and you had something in your hand, more likely than not, you're going to get tear gas in your face because that's already happening, or you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get a nightstick somewhere.
It'd be like in Akira where he fucking shoots that tear gas canister gun right in the guy's face. That's what would have happened. He would have pulled out a tear gas canister gun and just shot her square in the mouth with it.
But what this commercial really kind of tied into was the point that I wanted to make at all. First off, was the way that protesting is viewed nowadays, the way it's portrayed from like the mainstream media's point of view, is almost like an act of terrorism, in the sense that when the Occupy movement started happening, first it started happening, Occupy Wall Street started happening, and then it spread to Austin. And I personally was in the Occupy Austin movement very briefly, and
Mm-hmm.
the night there was one night where I was literally like meditating in the midst of a protest that was really just a rave from in Austin's point of view, because they were trying to reflect something that was seriously going on. And then you had what the news started portraying as homeless people taking over the spots where we were protesting, right? And so the people that were trying to stay the night there so they wouldn't move, so that something would be done, they were just kind of being thrown under the bus as like, look at all these vagrants that are dancing around and doing drugs and raving. And then the one thing I remember is the news came. I don't remember which station. I think it was a local news station, and they were interviewing people. And the instant they got someone,
Got a couple people in the chat, by the way. Welcome.
welcome.
Guys.
Okay, so they were interviewing this one gentleman. He had some very concise statements to say, and then they started panning the camera over, and it was quiet. And as soon as I said abolish the Federal Reserve, they cut the cameras off. They were just like boom,
Oh.
out.
Well,
Because that was my point. That was my point. When I went into the general meetings that they were having right before this happened, they were like, well, what's our message? And mine was, well, don't we want to kind of like restart things as they are, since everything is such, it's like in a negative state, not even in the in like a good and bad sense, but like in a debt sense. And the only way you can reset that is if you reset like the system in place. And so suggesting that it gets shut out, it gets blacked out of the media.
Cut those cameras. Yeah, we were talking about that in a couple episodes earlier, of the idea of like, the second you start talking about it, like if you're on new, if CNN invites you to an interview and you're talking about something that they invited you there to talk about, the second you start making a point that doesn't fit the narrative, they immediately just, oh, no, cut, we don't have any time left, sorry about it, let's go ahead and cut to commercial.
You see it
It
the
always
most.
happens.
You see it the most in mainstream news sources such as Fox. There is some of it in CNN, but CNN has a better. They do a better job of putting their spin on it in one light. But at the same time, to me, it seems like someone's using two hands of a puppet show to go like this while there's real shit happening behind that. You know,
Right.
outside the king's castle, there's like a fucking jester with two puppets above his head, and everyone's like
Mm.
sitting around this little booth and looking at the two hands and being like, "Those are so real. Those are real people. Look how stupid they are." And
Yeah.
then really what's actually happening is there's a bigger person paying both those sources off, or that owns, basically owns both of those news sources, and then makes them look like two different entities when in
Two
actuality,
warring entities. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing we see in the election cycle of,
absolutely.
hey, these people are totally different now. They want to achieve the exact same goals.
Yeah, Trump and Clinton are a prime example, because no matter how many times we try to scorn Trump for the position he's in now, or Hillary Clinton for all the things she's done up until now, it's all the same. Like they literally, there's pictures and interviews of both parties being like, yeah, we hang out with each other, we're best friends, we're really good people, we're both
He
good.
came to my wedding. He did,
Yeah,
this he did this.
and
Well, and a point real quick that just so we don't go totally past it, is something I wanted to bring up. You were talking about how in Austin during the Occupy protests that they were essentially trying to pitch a narrative that it was just homeless people taking over a part of the city.
and
And what
people that were raped,
I
you know.
yeah, I can't stand this idea of just fuck the homeless. Like, why is that a way that you're gonna pitch? This is bad because it's homeless people trying to have a place to stay. In Houston, just recently, and that's where I'm broadcasting from. We have first of all, they banned the use of tents in public areas. So anytime you try and use a tent in Houston, it's immediately seen as camping. No go. You can't have a tent. So all the homeless
Really?
people who keep themselves safe with tents, no go. And now the city council is trying to push forward legislation that's saying that you can't even essentially any type of staying in public, being homeless essentially is now going to be fucking illegal. They're trying to criminalize being homeless. And it's like at that point, what the fuck are you supposed to do? You get punished for not having a house? How the
Well,
fuck does that work?
see, okay, in my mind, I'm a problem solver, if you will. And in
Mm.
my mind, I have no political influence. I have no way to push legislation of any kind. So the only thing that I can do is build. I'm a good builder. I'm a decent builder, but I have big ideas. That's what makes me kind of like flourish from builders. So what I want to do for these people that can't camp out anymore, they don't have homes. Well, we need to start a campaign where I'm learning how to build self-sustainable communities. There's already places like the Earthship campaign where they're teaching communities how to build their own structures that have their own gardens, that run their own water supply and electricity. With enough of that knowledge, we can implement it in these locations and parts of the city that are already being used, um, are being misused, let's say, because that makes more sense. And we need to find properties on the land that are being misused and reappropriate them for these people that are being pushed out into the streets. Oh, you can't camp out anywhere in the city. Well, they need
Mm-hmm.
a place to go, because otherwise, their life, their conditions are not going to get any better. One of the problems with, but I'm saying this from a personal level, it's hard to reason with or to level with a homeless person when you're fine in your own little bubble, and the only time you see them is when they're standing on the corner of a light. I always
Mm-hmm.
have that trouble. Everyone has that trouble making eye contact with the person, because the instant you do, you start connecting with that person to one way
Mm-hmm.
or another. And that's also where judgment comes into play. Do I give this person money? Do they deserve it? Well, no. Everyone deserves a place to live and shelter. It's like there are those that have been cast out to the point where they turn it around and just start going even further, and it doesn't get any better, where they just start buying drugs and get caught in that loop. They need treatment that they can't even afford, and so they just kind of end up losing their minds. Like, I've seen a lot of people on the streets of Austin. Some of them are brilliant, and some of them are really friendly and funny, and some of them have totally lost it because they get caught in that endless cycle of, I have no money, so I'm going to scrounge up money and buy things that make me feel comfortable. That's an illusion. It's like alcohol, or, I mean, crack. It's an extreme assumption, but I can safely say that there,
Just to give a little bit of background for me and Lantern here, we at one point we worked together at a smoke shop in downtown
that
Austin.
will remain
So
unnamed because
yeah,
it it's
you can probably, if you think smoke shop in Austin downtown, you can probably guess which one it is. But we worked there together,
You
And yeah, it was definitely a weird tap into uh, not necessarily befriending, but definitely making strong acquaintances with the homeless population in Austin. Getting to know these people a little deeper than you would just passing them by on a street corner. And you know, you really do get to see the wide spectrum, man. The guys who are uh, the guys who are just down on their luck, who have had a hard time, who are they kind of move from place to place to try and stay alive, and then you've got the guys who are completely fucking schizophrenic, and not that they don't deserve help, but they're the guys who are like the hardest to get along with because like sometimes they're cool and sometimes they're just screaming at you and losing their mind, and you're like,
clothes off and thinking that they're different people in a store
yeah,
that you work at. You
yeah,
know, really,
yeah.
really hard to reason with someone that's half naked and yelling at you while you're telling them to leave a building that you work at. You can't go beyond that building despite feeling like connected at least to the level that I wish I could seek proper medical attention for you, but
Josh in the chat just asked us. He said, "Oh my God, you smoke the weeds." We only smoke legal tobacco here, guys. That's the only thing that we partake in. That's what we were working at the smoke shop. We were selling legal tobacco pipes, and when we're here on the podcast, we're only smoking legal things that are legal in Texas.
But if we ever tour places such as like Colorado or California or
Oh, then yeah,
we're
we
hanging
would be happy to take place in the in marijuana in the places where it's totally acceptable and legal to do
yeah,
so.
as long as we have our papers, as long as everything's properly documented and the federal government doesn't try to just step on our dicks essentially. Yeah,
But yeah, it's
but
so
under those circumstances, yes, is my
yeah, we would and we do. But in but I think it brings up an interesting issue, man. It's that those, like we were talking about the schizophrenic homeless guys, there's no part of me that wants help for those guys any less because they're so abrasive and hard to deal with. But I think it's kind of symptomatic of why those guys get pushed under the rug so easily is because it's such an easier decision to just go away, crazy guy yelling at me, than it is to go, hey man, how can I find some help for you? What can I do to make sure you're getting the help that you need?
It's unfortunate to say, but it is a survival instinct because there are a small percentage of those people that are going to come up to you and be like, "Hey, I have a story for you. Oh, here's a knife. Give me money," because that does
Yeah.
happen to a certain point of desperation. And the way that you can stop that is by decriminalizing drugs and then also trying to build communities for these kinds of people and the people that have schizophrenia that aren't being helped or these kind of mental disorders and illnesses, especially physical disabilities. I've met a homeless guy that didn't. I was like, "What did you want to be when you grew up?" And I was a lot younger, and he was like, "I wanted to be a football player." And me being me, the optimist me, I'm like, "Why didn't you? What's going on? You could grow up. You could still be that football player." And he goes, "I lost my toes because of diabetes." And then I just looked down at his feet, and he didn't have any toes, and I just went, "Oh God!" Like
Well,
that,
fuck.
like, oh shit.
That really throws a wrench in the football gears. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but I'm not saying that humans do certain things to themselves, but we also have these conditions and disorders we need to take care of. This is why there's a big issue with healthcare right now, but there's also dialing it back to what we were originally talking about. We need to take care of the homeless better because the way that we take care of them on a day-to-day basis on an individual level is terrible. I mean, from a personal experience, I'm saying this. I don't feel any better about the way that I've tried to treat homeless people. I've tried to feed them because I used to get food at the end of the day where I worked, and it only really worked for one or two of them to the point where when I would hand them food, they would look at me like I was about to attack them. This is how our trust system works in and I mean even in our state in this little community. I don't know if I can express it state-wise because it's more so on a citywide scale that I've seen it. But I've also
Right.
lived in Houston and seen very similar things. When you try to give food to the homeless, they're not immediately like, "Oh, food, thank you. Oh my God, this is amazing." They're like, "What are you going to do to me?" Because they're so not used to the community not giving back to them. When in actuality, we need to redesign the system, or we keep saying the expression "reform the system," and really, when it comes down to it, we don't even know where to start. But I think where to start is to come up with really good ways to reappropriate this amassed wealth that's only in the hands of the few, and give them really good ideas that makes them even more famous. Hey, you're a really
Well,
person, right? We can give you more airtime if you just help the community more with all that money you have. It's really
some
not
some
hard.
some way to incentivize to tap into people's natural, greedy kind of nature, to
Yeah,
incentivize, hey, you can be greedy, but if you at least do something right, at least if you're doing something decent for your community, like, incentivize the bettering of a community. Like, for instance, if these massive corporations, if you want to get no tax dollar, or if you don't want to have to pay taxes at the end of the year, instead of just going, well, you don't have to pay taxes because you're a job creator. Why don't we say, okay, donate, if you can prove that you donated $2 million to, a charitable, charitable company or charitable resource, then we can give you this tax break. Find some way to go about doing that. Because right now, the way that we act is towards the homeless. Like, for instance, there are more vacant homes in America than there are homeless people. So there are more house. Yeah, it's totally true. I'll have to look up the statistics, but I don't know exactly how many homes to homeless people. I think it might even be like there's 2 vacant homes to every homeless person in America.
well, it's
So
true. We just need to redistribute those homes, right?
right, and the only reason that we don't is people go, well, I pay for my home. Fuck that guy. Why does he get a free? And well, because there's it's a really weird issue to have, you know, a shitload of vacant homes that no one's gonna occupy, that no one's using at all,
Yeah,
and to have a bunch of people without any home whatsoever. There seems like there could be some sort of easy answer to say, can't we get together as a community and buy some of these homes and then use them as places for homeless people to stay? Because it's not like every homeless guy needs his own home, but can't we at least buy a home and then house, 3 or 4 homeless people per house? Give them, hey man, you guys live in this community situation, and as long as you take care of the house, as long as you're not using drugs in the home, you're not doing anything illegal in the home, we can give you something, we can give you a place to stay. It's a weird thing to have, and it's the same idea as we have more food, then we throw away, just tons and tons of food every day,
yeah.
and then there are people in other countries or people in our own country starving to death. It just seems like one of these math equations that you're like, doesn't is there a better way to
Move this
balance this?
here and move that there, and it would be fine, right?
Right, and I know that's a more simplified version of it, that it's more complex than that, but those are the questions we need to be answering. Those are the equations worth balancing in my mind. It's not worth arguing, should transgender people be allowed to use bathrooms? It's such a waste of our fucking time. Who gives a fuck? Use whatever bathroom you want. We need to spend our resources and our time talking about how do we solve these seemingly simple, probably more complex, but obvious answer kind of situations.
Yeah, because
Um,
there's a lot of smaller issues that keep being thrown into the public eye, almost like sand, uh,
mhm.
to keep us from seeing the bigger issues at hand that are being revealed faster and faster on a day-to-day basis because of how fast information gets across the world now. It's really hard to avoid. No matter how much information is suppressed, there's always going to be a group of people that do what they can to break those walls down, because as painful as it is to see through the cracks and see what's on the other side of the suppressed information barrier, it's necessary in order for humanity to evolve on a social level and get together better. Instead of it seeming like such an impossibility, we need to take care of the community better so there are less homeless people, or none at all, because if we were doing this properly, people would be getting the proper health care despite not having the ability to afford it. And then, I'm not saying that only the rich have to be responsible for these problems, because that's not fair either. Because that is the argument that they always make: is, hey,
Mhm.
I amassed this myself. You can't take this from me. That is the capitalist way. And yeah, you're right. It's true. And that's
And it's
also
it.
why communism and socialism, these things, these ideas, the concept of sharing has been shunned in a lot of ways and tied to negative connotations
Well,
because
why is it that altruism seems to go out the window when you get older? Like we all teach our kids sharing is important, giving taking care of those who have less than you is important, but the second you become an adult, everyone kind of universally goes, "Yeah, fuck all that shit."
well,
That's stupid and we don't.
I'd like to just interject really quick with an answer to that question. I don't know if it was rhetorical, but my simplest answer is that you can't trust everyone equally. Because
Mhm.
despite everyone attempting, I've tried that my whole life, and I've been
Mhm.
stabbed in the back a few times. And if we're being completely frank here, I've stabbed a few people in the back myself because of that vindictiveness that you gain over the years of
Right.
of feeling like the world owes you something when it really doesn't because you try to trust everyone equally, and then all of a sudden here come a few people taking what you earned yourself, you know.
Right.
So it's all
Also,
survival instinct tied into this.
real quick shout out to we got to Justin here in the chat and saying this last couple comments said all money evil ties back to 1913. Public money, that's the way it's supposed to be. In the Fed, abolish the Act of 1871 and use the 10th Amendment for the new operating system. Do you want to field some response to those
Yeah,
comments there?
absolutely. Justin, I feel like you also know about the reasoning behind JFK's assassination. Is that correct?
Let's see if we get some response. Just keep talking about it. We'll
Well,
see
I'm
where.
assuming that's going to be a yes.
Mm,
In saying that, I do honestly believe that JFK was assassinated because he was trying to do what Justin just mentioned, where he was trying to abolish the Federal Reserve and put forth a gold standard dollar, which would
mm-hmm,
force gold and money to, equate each other again. Did I say that correctly?
mm-hmm.
Like basically, money would equal gold again, which isn't it's not supposed to be feasible in the way the system's set up now because we're supposed to be indentured servants. We're supposed to put ourselves into servitude because this nation is in a great debt to.
We need our debt is what the elite love. They love fucking debt. And so if every dollar you own puts you in debt, if every dollar is a debted dollar, then everyone is automatically put in this system of debt. And it having a currency with no finite end to it doesn't make any sense. If you even look at, like, for example, look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the largest growing, kind of self-sustained economic force. And the way that Bitcoin operates is that less and less Bitcoin gets created. More of it gets created, and then it hits a certain point where fewer and fewer Bitcoins get created every day because it creates this finite nature. And so you can't have wild inflation that becomes, unregulatable. You have something where, hey, there's only a finite amount of Bitcoin, so we have to have some sort of sustainability to this currency. We have to have some way of monitoring how much each Bitcoin is worth because there's only so many of them to go around. It's why having a gold standard, having these finite resources tied to currency is important, or at least creating a finite nature of currency is important because otherwise that's how you get just print more money, just create more
Yeah,
uselessly. There's no reason to do it, but let's do it.
because what ended up happening initially with that is before they figured out ways to create anti-fraudulent bill systems, there were people from different states creating their own money because money could basically look like whatever you wanted it to. If you just convinced someone that the papers you had in your hand had enough printing on it to be official money, you'd be trading these notes around that are supposed to represent something that they didn't anymore, and everything went to shit because
And it makes almost a situation in which it's the easy out. It's the lazy answer to, hey, our currency is taking a shit and is losing value, or we're having issues with properly distributing currency. The hard answer, the difficult answer is, okay, well, we need to reevaluate what we're doing with our economy because if we're seeing these issues with our economy, now we need to we need to find ways to make our currency more valuable as opposed to just going, or we could just print endless amounts of currency which devalues it in the long run, but it's a quick band-aid fix for the problems that you currently have.
I completely agree with you. I see that problem as well. I've always argued it, but it's kind of an endless loop. I want to mention something that I don't think many people do, especially when they're streaming, because they try to keep it live and don't want to interrupt. But what Justin said, is there any way you can scroll back to it and I'll take notes on it and we can
Mhm.
mention it further in the next episode and we'll give a shout out to you, Justin, because it sounds like that was an important little chunk of info that you sent us and it would be kind of unwise to ignore it. Perhaps if you can scroll back to it, I'll jot down the main points.
Yeah, I'll repeat. Justin's comments were all money evil ties back to 1913. Public money, the way it's supposed to be. In the Fed, abolished the Act of 1871, used the 10th Amendment for the new operating system. So
It,
yeah, yeah, I would say that we'd be more than happy to research that a little bit and come back with some more commentary on it, and maybe that'll be good incentive for Justin to come back to the next show
yeah,
and
exactly.
hang out with us a little longer.
That is the balancing act to that as well. Is I'm not just trying to kiss your ass. If you're still watching this, Jess, I'm not trying to kiss your ass. I'm actually trying to gain insight on what you're, sending out. Because one thing I've noticed a lot in YouTube comments is that people don't take those things seriously. You do not take YouTube comments seriously, right? Because so many people are arguing points and splitting hairs to this point of like nonsensicality. I think that's a real word, but it's what I'm trying to say is if you look at each individual point as it comes up and you're able to go back to it and say, okay, well, we're talking about this right now, but by next episode I'll have done a little more research on what you said and we can mention it tomorrow morning. And that way
Yeah,
there's a whole other like going in depth on something we kind of failed to go in depth on earlier because we didn't know as much about it,
right. Well, and that's I think that's the nature, and kind of as the show is evolving, I think that's going to be the nature of the morning show or the early show is really a lot of community interaction, and we want to do community interaction on the late show too. But the late show is essentially kind of morphing into us, drinking some booze and just telling spooky stories and having a good time. A little less serious or more serious, but definitely less organized is
well,
going to be what the late show is.
it started out realistically dark and then it went into like fantastically dark.
Right,
Not even
right.
in the sense that I was enjoying how dark it was at the end, but more so like fantasy versus what could be happening in reality that's very sinister. So it's like in the morning time we talk about these real events that are happening, but also ways to benefit the planet. Kind of like the positive aspect of it, the happy side of it. Not even the happy side, because we're mentioning serious events that
Hmm.
happy at all. They're tragic, and they need to be confronted, and we need to kind of get to the origin of some of these like events that are occurring all over the planet. But the only way we can do that and it works successfully is as a collective. So in the daytime we kind of we're sending that vibe out, and then at night we're talking about everyone's off work and they want to. Some people like to listen to spooky shit right before they go to bed. So
Oh yeah.
before it's really officially sundown, we start talking about the darker side of what's going on in politics and how it's connected to, you know, the entire world. And then it just gets darker and darker until, like, literally outside and reflecting what we're talking about to the point where we're talking about, missing people, missing kids, and then all of a sudden, Wendigo, Skinwalker,
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about skinwalkers.
evil wizards, ghost stories. It's like it just completely goes off the rails.
I was I'm really interested and we might have to do this outside of YouTube, which once we collect a little bit of a bigger audience, I think this would be a really fun idea to do. But there's places that we could live stream movies, and technically we're still under our copyright laws to show movies as long as we're commenting on them. Now
Oh,
you
that's beautiful. We could.
yeah now
I mean, can we do that with shows as well?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and YouTube, because YouTube cares a little less about what's actually legal and more about what's advertiser friendly, which I understandably, man. I mean, advertisers. That's the only reason YouTube exists is because people advertise. That's how they make money. Um, but technically, due to the DMCA Act, we're totally within our right to comment on anything that we want, to comment on any video that we want, as long as we technically acquired it in legal means. Um, and we're commenting on it or we're parodying it in some way, shape, or form. That's why Mystery Science Theater is allowed to exist. You can talk shit on a movie as long as you're just not showing the movie outright.
And as far as DC and I go, I'm a parody of myself. So
Yeah, I think there's
I
some way to tie into that as well. You know.
you know, I I just always told my dad I was going to be a superhero. That's all there.
And there's
And this is the way it's actually going to make a difference, a positive difference, and not be totally bullshit and just like a fantasy world. Because I mean, it still is just like trying to hype. You're like kind of hyping yourself up and maybe even your ego to some level. But I'm also trying to keep what I'm doing on a beneficial scale separate from like any kind of fame or like it's just it. That's bullshit because every time people get on the fame train, they lose sense of themselves. They lose sight of themselves. They become worshipped by the masses. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, man. Well, that's why we're kind of in a fun area right now because nobody knows who the fuck we are, and so we have a little bit more freedom at this time.
Thanks for watching, whoever's watching, because
Yeah, man.
we're nobodies, and that's kind of the point of it. Is like we're
Yeah.
nobodies that know a little bit of what's going on. Like there's some weird, sinister shit out there, and we just try to keep making connections as much as we can.
And we're all, I mean, we're all nobodies together. I think that's what the great part of it is that we're individually, who gives a fuck about any of us, but we can have fun and talk together and enjoy that kind of space that we carve out. So, yeah, it reminded me of years and years ago. I think probably when I was about 19 or 20, there used to be these watching parties. Um, that you would be able to hop into that would be posted on 4chan and stuff, and someone would stream a movie and everyone could get in and comment on it and talk about it. And it was a lot of fun, man. I remember watching Die Hard, and it was these running jokes started developing in the comments that people were just laughing their asses off at, and it really developed into a much funnier kind of situation. Uh, Justin just commented that he wanted to call in and be on screen. I don't know if that's feasible for the show right now, but if you want, we're gonna do another stream tonight, more than likely. If you want to direct message me here on YouTube and give me your Skype information, I don't know if that's feasible for you, or maybe if you want to do the morning show tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe
But
if trying to start a group thing interrupts your stream, then let's have either Justin on later tonight if he's cool with that, or tomorrow
right, and
we'll have a better setup.
totally, and that's Justin. It's not on you at all. That's completely on my inability to really know what I'm doing here. So I know that I'd probably have to stop the stream right now and figure some other shit out to make sure everything was running properly. But I would be more than happy. Like I said, if you want to DM me your information, your Skype name or whatever, we could. I'd be more than happy to try and get you on the show, and we could have a conversation with you for sure. That'd be great.
I'm glad you stuck around, Justin. Wasn't sure because I wasn't kind of waiting for a response back as these live streams go. But going back on what I was saying about JFK, another portion of that story that is kind of like rumored to have happened was one of the things he was also trying to have happen on his way to. But before he was assassinated, was he on his way to Austin from Dallas? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on his way to Austin, he was going to disclose information about UFO technology as well. But right before he did all of this, he had also given a speech about organized crime syndicates and secret societies running governments across the world. He kept it very vague because he didn't want to cause panic in the audience. So the way he worded it was very, very discreet. But it's that infamous recording that is all over YouTube, all over the internet, that the most famous speech he gave right before he was assassinated. And it was his most honest one, too. Very few presidents have given a speech quite like that one. Because there is some sort of shadowy power and influence behind these things that go on.
I'll go ahead and go out on a limb and say I don't think any president has made a speech like that ever. I think that it's kind of a one in a kind. You know, we've had like FDR and some of these guys would touch on it a little bit, but no one really came out and said, you know, there's some dark shit going on here that we really need to address as the public. You know.
I'm trying to think if it was Eisenhower that warned of the military-industrial complex. Um,
I
what it wrote.
think you might be right there, because he was. I do believe that he was warning about the military-industrial complex, while also kind of hypocritically pushing the military-industrial complex agenda as well. You know,
Well,
and
maybe
that's
maybe because from his point of view, he saw what was actually happening as he was agreeing to something. You know.
Landry. Did you ever have you ever seen Oliver Stone's The Untold History of America?
No, actually, I haven't.
It's a really great series on Netflix that I watched with my girlfriend, and it's an amazing breakdown of, you know, we can keep repeating this line that America's the greatest country in the world, and keep jacking ourselves off, but the reality is that we've been destabilizing and controlling every other country on the planet, save for maybe China. Um, since the beginning of our country's existence. You know, after we had a civil war and kind of conglomerated as a country, that's been our biggest agenda nonstop. Is going, hey, you're gonna play ball with America, right? No, we don't want to play ball with America. Okay, well, we're gonna fuck you in the ass until you're no longer in charge, and then we're gonna put our own guy in charge, and he's gonna play ball with America.
Exactly, exactly. It's interesting how that all pans out, but it's because those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it, and only those with enough time on their hands to sit on their asses and study it figure out what's going on. Because most of us are too busy being good indentured servants because we're working as hard as we can to afford our living situation. That's nothing to argue. But at the same time, in the same hand, um, it's up to us to figure out what's wrong, and we have to work as a collective to change it because this is still very much a kingdom. This is still very much an empire. Um, I,
Mm.
I need to pause what I'm saying to grab a portable charger, but I'm gonna come right back.
Yeah, go ahead. We're gonna do, and that means I'm gonna do a quick, just a quick break. I'm gonna go grab a little bit more coffee. I'm gonna put some more music on Crystal Castles, but just hang out with us. It'll be 2 minutes maximum here. I'll be right back.
Battery check.
All right, guys.
Okay, here I come. Sorry,
Okay, yeah.
I was checking my battery.
No, I went ahead and grabbed an energy drink myself, and just put some music on. But we're back. We are back here on the stream.
Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for sticking in, uh,
Sticking around with
sticking
us.
around, sticking in. Oh man.
I don't know what I did. I did some small fine tuning on the operating on OBS, and we've had a perfectly healthy stream this whole time. So I think I tuned properly. I think we're doing well here.
You can tell from the first episode all the way up until now, which we've been cranking these out because of how excited we are, which is why there's not as much production quality as there is fine tuning as you go. You're like riding a vehicle and like adjusting the gears at the same time.
Yeah, we're building a car while we're driving it to New Mexico. You know, it's
Uh,
that's kind of the idea.
Speaking of which, this is a cool topic change right here. I think my buddy, um, I'll call him Captain Adam. He goes by Captain Adam. He has this great idea that I wanted to put out there. Is like we need to start getting more vehicles to run off of these easily acquired resources, such as used vegetable oil. Despite it being expensive to convert a pre-existing car into that, into an engine that can run off that, once it's done, it's a lot cheaper to drive around with that kind of technology. So if we all started thinking, with that in mind, I think it would just shift things in the right direction.
No, I think the more people who can hop on board with that, and I live in Houston where a lot of people would claim that riding your bike is impossible. They're full of fucking shit. I've been riding my bike for 2 years here in Houston now. I haven't had a car in 2 years, and it's a little more difficult. It's not as convenient, but it's totally fucking doable. And it really, for me, I mean, it's something I do out of necessity, but at the same time, I really, feel in my own small, tiny little way that I'm sticking up the middle finger to the oil companies because I just don't really rely on them anymore.
Well, it's a good thing you mentioned that because I've made it a point to take notes on that subject. Oil companies. One thing, the only reason that hemp became illegal is the real reason is not because of the propaganda such as reefer madness that marijuana would make you a crazy person, but it's actually the oil companies' fear that hemp oil could be used and is much more easily acquired than this, hard to obtain resource that's really difficult to
Well,
acquire, that takes
right.
a long time to replicate itself.
No, and the hemp issue it's a really interesting thing to talk about because it's hemp and marijuana are not the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
They're two different plants. They're just
Ellen.
very, very, very similar.
Yeah.
And so it really was. I mean, the banning of hemp and the banning of marijuana it was essentially the powers that be exploiting people's misunderstanding of what marijuana and what hemp were.
Well,
Not a lot of people understood even what marijuana was, let alone that hemp wasn't the same fucking plant.
yeah.
And so, the major, the oil industry, some of the plastics industries and stuff like that. These are all industries that didn't want hemp to be propagated anymore because it was something that damaged their industry.
Well,
And
the textile companies. So basically, fabric companies. And here's another point in that. Henry Ford, although I don't fully support his ideology, in the sense that he was a Nazi supporter or a Nazi sympathizer, or whatever you want to call him, one of the ideas that he did have was very brilliant. He wanted to his first Model T was designed based off of the idea that it was all hemp, that the seats were made out of hemp textile, that the rubber was hemp based, the oil it ran off of, like everything. And the other thing about it was the plastic that was based off of hemp as well would last longer than the car shells nowadays. So basically, the automobile industry would have gone under completely because everybody would have these infinitely existing growable cars. You could grow a car. If everyone knew you could grow a car, the automobile empire would just crumble.
Well, and that
That's a
a lot of that ties
big
into the idea of planned obsolescence, man. You know, which is something that's so fucking frustrating. So like, my favorite example of planned obsolescence is the first light bulb that was ever created still works today. It gets turned on every day. The first light bulb ever created still fucking works, still is turned on, and has no problems being turned on. We could totally have that capability, except people realize like, oh shit, if a homeowner only needs to buy 4 light bulbs for the rest of his life, and maybe even for the life of his house, then we're gonna run out of money. And it's one of those things that where corporate interest kind of takes over public good. We don't need light bulbs that blow up every couple of months, but they do because that's how you make a little more cash at the end of the day.
Well, what was the filament made out of, if not
Uh,
tungsten?
the in the original light bulb, I'd have to look it up. And let me pull it up real quick. You can keep talking if you.
I do want to keep talking because it's intrigued me. I got to say, if you're talking about Thomas Edison, is that the first light bulb you're referring to?
I believe so. Let me pull
Okay,
it up real
because
quick.
I honestly believe that's not the first light bulb on the planet. I just have to say.
Okay, so the first practical incandescent light bulb, Edison and his team of researchers tested more than 3,000 designs. In November 1879, Edison filed a patent with an electric lamp with a carbon filament.
Carbon.
So that was, yeah, carbon filament, and
Carbon
that's the bulb that still is turned on today.
Maybe that's the secret. If all light bulbs had carbon filaments and not tungsten, they wouldn't have to be replaced. Just like if all automobiles were based off of hemp and not metal and reusable fossil fuels. See, because these are the problems of the world. And if people really think all these wars are happening because of oil, well, then I already know how to stop all the wars if they really all are based off oil.
Yeah, well,
Which
and
they
they're
truly
based
are.
off.
It's a generalization, but
It's I think that it's a combination of oil interests are certainly a big part of that, but also weapons manufacturing is a huge. I mean, there's only 2 major weapons manufacturers on the planet: the U.S. and Russia doesn't even manufacture that many weapons anymore. They're still selling off old stock. That's why every rebel fighter group has AK-47s, because it's all old Russian stock that they overproduce. But
well,
America,
guns are really reliable. You can bury them under sand and throw them in water, and then
dip them in a bucket of water and you can still shoot them. Yeah, for sure. And they're not the most advanced guns on the planet, but yeah, they're fucking brick houses. 100%. But it's to the point where, when you have Americans fighting rebel forces in the Middle East, when a bunch of Americans get blown up, oftentimes they can show evidence from the shells that they're being blown up with weapons that we manufactured. So it's American people getting blown up by American weapons. It's completely fucking ridiculous.
so that in essence we're killing ourselves to
Yeah.
to prove something to ourselves.
Well, because we try it, we destabilize a country, we install our own, or it's their military, but it's really our a portion of their military that we control. We give them a bunch of weapons. That military becomes radicalized, flips out, and then they start attacking American soldiers again. And so we give them the weapons to be like, hey, here's these weapons to fight the rebel forces. Oh, now you're the rebel forces? Okay, well, now you're using our weapons that we sold you against us. But at the end of the day, the corporate elite, they all made a big fat buck on it, and it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter who the weapons went to, whose hands, who's getting blown up, as long as the weapons got sold in the first place.
And we still get to eat cake,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
as long as we're happily fed and still doing our chores, our labor, then the nation keeps running.
Yeah.
As soon as everyone realizes that we are the reason that this war machine still exists, we'll have to just drop what we're doing and we pick up the tools, the same exact tools, and use them in a different way. It's like it's just a metaphor, because people can't just stop being who they are all of a sudden. You just have to turn around and look in a better direction and realize I can use these abilities that I've acquired over the years for better means. You know,
Well, we can, yeah, we can't undo the past, but we can certainly start walking down a better path for the future.
absolutely.
Uh, and that is something that's where I think the biggest issues exist with capitalism is that we're walking down the path of a capitalist system that has been failing us for a long fucking time and continues to fail us every day. And every day we don't start trying to change that path up, we continue to fuck ourselves over as a society.
Yes.
That's why people like Bernie Sanders just got thrown right down the fucking toilet because he had some real answers and some real. Bernie Sanders was so popular because he was one of the first people to go, "Hey, Americans, you know how you feel like you're getting fucked? You know how you feel like you're getting screwed over by the elite, by these corporate rulers? You're not alone, dude. That's not paranoia. That is happening. I have proof that it's happening, and I have ways to change it. And that's why, regardless of how many people supported that dude, regardless of how many people had his back and wanted him to run for president, he couldn't. He just got denied. He got straight up denied. And the same thing that happened to Ralph Nader. You know, it's these people who come along who are like, let me tell you, we've got problems, and I think I've got solutions, or at least the beginning of solutions. And we just tell those people, sorry, that's not how this country runs. We don't like that idea because the country is run by the wealthy elite, and you're talking about trying to take power away from the wealthy elite.
The only way you can do this peacefully is by duping the elite into painting themselves into a corner, which they already kind of have, and instead of a violent solution, you just make them pay for their crimes, literally. Pay for your crimes. You have enough money to pay for your crimes. Well, how do
Yeah.
you pay for your crimes? You feed the community that can't feed itself. You take care of the community that can't take care of itself. The portions of the people that need mental and physical help that can't afford it for themselves, you have to pay for it. Why? Because you've been funding war crimes. Why can't you
Mm-hmm.
fund this? Why can't you
Well, and
accidentally become a good person because people make you? You know, like that.
And you look at our regulations that we have in the country, we always have monetary punishments. And monetary punishments don't seem to be working in the way that we implement them because like for like Wells Fargo, they got in a lot of trouble for essentially making all these false bank accounts and signing people up for bank accounts that they never signed up for to inflate their numbers. And their punishment for that was a monetary a specific number. Here's how much you have to pay for your punishment. And the problem with that is that the bankers will just calculate that in it's just a cost. It's just another cost. They're like, well, if from this deal we make $13 billion, but the government's eventually going to find out about it and they're going to fine us 50 million. It doesn't matter because our profits far outweigh that cost, and so it just gets calculated into the equation.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. The only way that this could be agreed upon, and in terms of like from the public's view,
Mm-hmm.
if that money was directly going to people that really needed it, to
Mm-hmm.
the other side of the world where nameless, fatherless children now have the resources to go live in a safe shelter that we are not bombing, that we are not attacking constantly for bad reasons,
Well,
for both
and if
and bad reasons, because there are good reasons behind the reasoning behind like sending military out and making sure that they're protecting us from being invaded, right, by preemptive strike, right. Well, then we just need to cut back on how many innocent people are dying in the process of us trying to stop the bad guy and actually
right.
stop a real bad guy, a real collective of bad guys, and not take everyone else out with them.
Well, and one of the things that if we wanted to really have a punishment, if society actually gave a shit about showing the bankers we mean business, we would say, the punishment wouldn't be, oh, we're fining you $2.5 million. The punishment would be like, you don't get to exist anymore. Your financial institution is done. You're not allowed to be a fucking business anymore because you fucked the American people. And how we don't operate in that manner it blows my mind. The American people should get together and go, "Oh, you fucked a lot of Americans over. Well, you don't get to be a business anymore. Sorry, that's the end result."
And if all that money was made through those means by being stolen from, by being stolen essentially, and there's nothing to do about it because there's no direct person to say sorry to, or give all this money back to, well, then you give it back to the community. They force them to tear their business down, and they force them to send back the money out
Yeah,
to
no,
the community. Like,
exactly. You get caught fucking over the American people. We liquidate your shit. That goes back into the community. We regulate that. Make sure the community actually is getting some form of prosperity out of your liquidation. And you can start from scratch if you want, but if you fuck up again, we just do the same thing again. We liquidate your ass, and that goes back to the American people.
would it be inappropriate for me to suggest that we start paying China back? Is that just too ridiculous to suggest? Like,
Uh, I think it's interesting that we could probably pay China back by just taxing the rich. That if they just paid their fucking taxes and we quit giving them loopholes, we could get that money back and start actually paying down our debts to China. But we don't want to do that because, once again, that affects the people in control, and the people in control don't want to pay a goddamn dime that they don't have to. If they can lobby against it, they'd rather spend a shitload of money lobbying against it than they would ever spend actually admitting that they did anything wrong or admitting that they owe anything to the public.
this could all be solved by forcing them to use that same money they'd be using to lobby their bullshit with actually doing something right with the world. People would be less mad at you if you were taking all that money and reappropriating it towards something that people actually thought was a good cause and saw the
Well,
effects of it happening and didn't just assume you're lying. Because there are
to,
probably rich people out there that are good-hearted people. They just
oh yeah,
had an honest living, and they figured out the secret to flipping their money right up to the point where now they're super rich. They have a great family. I've met some people like this. They're sometimes they're few and far between because the communities we live within, we like to treat each other with this certain kind of plasticity that I mentioned in one of our last episodes. But that it really, if you have an honest living that you've been working for to take care of your family, that's one thing. But if you're taking advantage of the masses to like reappropriate the wealth for yourself, and you're not giving it back, and you're not doing the right thing with it, that does become an issue, because then people are just lobbying their own bullshit. It's a selfish act. You're not
well, and I
solving
think
the problem.
that's one of those misconceptions that Americans, that they get a little caught up in. So many people think like, oh, if you're raising taxes on the wealthy, then like, what about the small business owner who just built up his business over time? He did everything by the books. He did everything honestly. That's not that dude isn't necessarily a part of the problem. It's the people who have offshore bank accounts with billions and trillions of dollars in it. How else am I supposed to look at it than just a tick that draws from the system? That money doesn't get circulated back into the economy. That money doesn't do anything prosperous for the American people. If you take $1 billion fucking dollars and put it in an offshore bank account, it just sits there. It's money hoarding. It blows my mind that if somebody, we have a whole show called Hoarders. If you hoard newspaper, if you hoard trash and you hoard cats, like, we'll make a TV show and go, isn't this crazy? But if you hoard money, you're an American hero. It blows my fucking mind that we see that. To me, it's the same psychological issue, but it's so much more detrimental because instead of just living in your own squalor, you're causing millions of people to live in squalor because you hoard fucking money.
Well, okay, the difference between hoarders and MTV cribs is what you're hoarding.
Mm-hmm.
I hoarded cats.
That's a great point, man. I didn't think of it that way. That's
Poverty.
a great point.
I'm poverty stricken. I hoard trash so that I get all the valuables out of it. I hoard cats because I feel bad about them. All of these things have a logical origin point, but then in your mind you just go crazy because once a lady because it would be sexist to say just a lady were to do this, but you do get the term of crazy cat lady. The reason is reality behind that is because of toxoplasmosis, which is a poisoning of the blood that happens when you have too many indoor cats that are prowling around. They have their shit sprinkling all over the house and you never clean it. It gets into your bloodstream and you get driven crazy. So like having more than one indoor cat and never letting them out and then like never cleaning it, and then you have a whole horde of them and you're collecting trash, and like you will go crazy. That is why there's a show for that. And then when you hoard money and you have all these cars and you have a fucking basketball court in your kitchen and you've got a diamond jacuzzi or what the fuck ever,
Uh huh.
just I'm just making shit up as we go, but
But no, that's I mean it's a really good point. Those are two TV shows that Americans love to watch, and it's that what is the difference between a guy who hoards money and a guy like we celebrate the money hoarder. We go that guy's fucking awesome. Look at that guy. He's hoarding money. But yeah, you hoard cats and newspapers, and we're like, what a piece of garbage. What a horrible human being.
Well, I got to point out, I just got to say, because we are still generalizing here, it is important to show certain, like, sports players have used all the money they've gotten to buy their families the things they needed. And that's pretty awesome. I've always
Yeah.
respected that when you see a basketball player. I can't think of any by name right now, but I've definitely seen these documentaries where you have these famous athletes that think they're going to have a contract for X amount of years. They're getting crazy money for doing what they do because they don't think
Well,
they're.
who's that? Is it what's that guy's name? Is it was it Kyle Kinane or something like that?
I
Is
really
that his?
wouldn't know. I really wouldn't know, not to sound too ignorant, but
I,
I don't know very much about sports at all.
no, that's a comedian. God damn it!
Oh well,
What is?
there you go. Well, then I know very little about comedians as well, apparently.
Let's see here. What was that fucking dude's name? Anyhow, but yeah, I mean, there are football players, there are guys who go out and pay for their families, who give back to the community. They do good things with it, but once again, there's a huge difference. Like those aren't the wealthy guys that we're talking about. We're talking about not people who are millionaires, multimillionaires. We're talking about people who are fucking billionaires. And I'm under the impression that there should be kind of a cap of money that you're allowed to own. You know, when you own so much money that it's a detriment to the society, that's literally you're a tick. You're pulling so much out of the host that it begins to kill the host. And when that happens, we need to all say, I don't give a shit about your lofty dreams of being the richest fucker on the planet. You're killing society. You
That's
know, you're causing real issues.
You're treading on dangerous waters though, because we've basically been conditioned to be scared of these concepts or angered about them. It's like because people don't want to feel like they have to have a level cap. Let's say you're in a video game and there is no level cap. You're like,
Uh,
oh, that's awesome. I can level forever. I'll have as many points into whatever charts as I want. And then one day, the gaming company that created the game came in and they were like, we don't think it's fair for anyone to amass as many points as they can because people have been figuring out how to cheat the system. So now everyone has a level 50 cap. That would piss people off. That would piss
right, but
people off.
but if and to stay within the situation, the metaphor that you're talking about here, let's say that yeah, you had like this infinite level cap, and so the dudes who grinded that video game and grinded their character to the point where they could just like walk out and just one shot anybody they came up to and steal all their gold and armor and were like, hey, fuck you.
That's
No one would
real.
want to play the game. Nobody would want to play the game. It
Well,
would be
that is,
detrimental to the community.
and that's a very good interpretation of it because that you see that happening. People that have enough money to have other people shoot people. People have enough money to walk up to a poor person and take all their fucking gold and clothing right off their backs because they owe something to another company, another corporation. Oh, you're in
Right. Give
this
me your house.
here.
Yeah. I
Because
can take your
all the
house and there's nothing you can do about it.
the banks keep getting bailed out because this is how the federal government works. And the federal government, if you notice the pattern throughout history, they're the only ones fucking up the natural order of community. Community is doing just fine. The people are trying to look out for themselves. But as soon as federal regulation comes into play, there are certain aspects of it that are supposed to make sense. You're not supposed to take drugs that are bad for you. They might kill you. You don't want children to take them, right? So there needs to be these certain regulations on the community. I get that. At the same time, though, there's too much evidence to suggest that it's all corrupt because it's tied into the wrong intentions. It's not tied into the right intentions.
Right. Well, you know what? I think we're hitting a lot of really good points here. I will say I've got a couple things that I got to take care of this afternoon before we do the afternoon show. So I don't know how you're feeling, but I think I mean we're at an hour 14 minutes right now. Um, I would love to come back on tonight and we can keep this conversation going for sure. I think that would be a good way to go. I don't know what time you're available, but we can kind of work that out. Once again, Justin, I don't know. We have a couple people watching right now. If you're still in the chat, Justin, like I said, shoot me a direct message. Give me your Skype name. Give me a couple topics you want to chat about, and we can do a little research and figure that out. Have you on the show and have a little conversation tonight.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Whoever's watching right now, we really appreciate that. The support means everything to us because we've always dreamed of doing this, and even just the small amount of people that are like paying attention really gives us that inspiration we need to keep the momentum going. Because
Yeah, I mean, if there's one person watching, man, like that's all that. If nobody's watching, we're still gonna do this either way.
that
But it really, I mean, it warms my heart to know that there's somebody else out there that's been hanging out with us that wants to watch us blather on for a fucking hour or so at a time. I love that and that support. I mean, just hanging out and listening to us talk, that it means the world to me, man, for sure.
absolutely. So let's say what is 7 p.m. going to be good?
I think seven's good, man. We'll do a little research. We'll see if we can get Justin in line to come on board and chat with us a little bit. Once again, if anyone's watching this in the future, if you watch this in the afternoon, you want to jump on board, direct message me. Feel free to drop a line, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. We're at the ground floor of this whole podcast thing, so we would love to have whoever wants to be on to come on with us.
Really appreciate it, y'all.
All right, cool, man. Well, thanks everybody. I'm gonna queue up a little bit more music here on the way out, and this is gonna be a little bit of Cynic from their album Trace to Air. Thank you guys, and we'll be back on later tonight. Appreciate you.
Peace.
Peace out.